Explainable AI as a tool to detect COVID. I'm Tonya Hall, and joining me is Dr. Alexander Wong, professor and Canada Research Chair at the University of Waterloo and co founder and chief scientist at DarwinAI. Welcome, Dr. Wong.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
What does DarwinAI do?
So, Darwin AI is an explainable AI company that focuses on enabling enterprises to be able to build deep learning AI solutions in a trusted and accelerated manner.
What's the story behind the partnership between DarwinAI, Red Hat, and Boston Children's Hospital related to COVID diagnosis and the goal of that collaboration?
So this all stemmed from the start of the pandemic when we thought about we can do at Darwin AI to help our healthcare workers to be able to better screen and diagnose as well as risk stratify COVID-19. And so one thing that we came up was this notion of COVIDNet, which is an open source, open access initiative for deep learning solutions for identifying, screening, and stratifying chest radiography, both chest x-rays as well as CTs, to enable us to then provide a predictive analysis for clinical institutes. And so this whole notion got really quite popular as we go, with a lot of interest in the community to further expand it out. Because at the end of the day, having great AI models that we build is good for research, good for development, good for spreading knowledge. But at the end of the day, when it's being used in clinical institutes by healthcare workers, it needs to be in an integrated system with a UI that's directly connected to the hospital system. And that's where the partnership with Red Hat, as well as with Boston Children's Hospital, really comes into play. And so with Red Hat, they have built a system called OpenShift. And upon that, the Boston Children's Hospital scientist team, led by Dr. Rudolph Penner, who is also a assistant professor at Harvard Medical, they have actually built a very nice system that allows for great integration and deployment in clinical healthcare institutes. And so we thought that by working together, we're able to take the AI brains that we've actually created and incorporate it and build an application on top of that to then surface this information about risks, about whether somebody has COVID or not, based on these different imaging modalities directly to the hospitals and clinical workers.
You mentioned the x-rays. What role do they play in a speedy diagnosis?
It's actually a pretty significant role. A lot of people have heard of tests like PCR tests. So that's like the nasal swab, throat swab, and so on and so forth. And that's very important for identifying whether somebody actually has it or not. But as part of the routine for screening anyone with respiratory complaint, which is one of the big symptoms of COVID-19, chest x-rays are a very key part, and it's done in a routine manner. So other thing that it provides that existing PCR tests don't is that outside of diagnosis, it also shows you the severity of the condition. And in terms of understanding severity in conditions, it allows clinicians to determine whether somebody needs to be treated a certain way. Is it stay at home? Is it they need to go in the ICU? Is it oxygen therapy? Do they need a ventilator? Do they need to have drug treatment right away? And so chest x-rays play a very pivotal role in determining how to take care as well as manage the COVID-19 disease within each individual patient.
Why is explainable AI an important element in this?
So explainable AI is a very important element to it for a number of different reasons. One of which, might seem quite obvious, is that at the end of the day, when it comes to healthcare workers and clinicians and radiologists, having the ability to really understand what the AI is making its predictions and recommendations on is very critical for trust. Imagine having an AI system, a black box AI system, that just tells a doctor what to do. They're not going to believe and trust in the system unless there's evidence behind it. And that's where explainability really comes into play, to surface the information, the insights that the AI is using to the clinician, so that they can use it for their clinical decision support as additional information to draw from. And the other important part of it is also from a development perspective. When you're developing deep neural networks, which are very complex and hard to grasp how they're making decisions, you might be able to build a system that has really, really high sensitivity, specificity, accuracy, but it might actually be leveraging all of the wrong cues. So making the right decisions for all the wrong reasons. So explainability allowed us to be able to develop COVIDnet in a rapid fashion and be able to understand its underlying workings so that we know it's actually doing the right thing. And when it's doing the incorrect thing in an incorrect behavior, we're able to fix it really quickly.
How did you build a data set early on for COVID-19? And how did the medical community contribute to
So
that?
yeah, it's always been challenging. Yes, so it's a very challenging process. There's been crowdsourcing movements at various institutes and universities. And so we've been leveraging that data as well as other data sources from clinical partners and so on and so forth. And one of our main jobs has been on the curation as well as the processing part. When you have data flying from different sources with different formats, different metadata, different resolution, different vendors, it becomes very hard to use. So what we've done is we've taken it from all these different sources early on, and we continue to build upon it so that we could actually have a unified, standardized data set that everyone can use with ease. And so we have two main data sets right now, one for chest x-rays, where we have tens of thousands of different chest x-rays across different conditions. And we also have one for CT scans, where we have over 100,000, and now very soon we'll be doubling the number of patients for that, of CT scans from around the world.
What is the CRIS platform and what role does it play?
So the CRIS platform is actually very pivotal to what we're developing right now. So the CRIS platform is an open source platform that enables rapid development and deployment of AI solutions within a clinical environment. And that's the one that's been developed by Dr. Rudolph Panier and his team at Boston Children's. And that sits on top of OpenShift that allows for very easy integration into existing clinical IT systems.
So, what are the next milestones for the collaboration?
So, very good question. So, one of the next milestones is better integration into PACS systems. So, at the end of the day, with most clinical institutes, their imaging data is managed through PACS systems. And so, having this pipeline that connects our AI to this wealth of data source allows us to not only improve our system, but also make it easy for a clinician to use their existing clinical IT systems to be able to retrieve cases, as well as then have it pass through our AI to not only see the underlying data, but also see the underlying predictions of likelihood of COVID, as well as on the severity of their condition.
Dr. Alexander Wong, professor and Canada Research Chair at the University of Waterloo and co founder and chief scientist at Darwin AI. If somebody wants to connect with you, Dr. Wong, what's the best way they can do that?
So the best way is to go to the Darwin AI website, the darwinai.com.
And thanks so much again for your time, Alexander.
Thank you.
And find more of my interviews right here on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or at tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.